Good morning. Welcome to Outdoor Retailer Online. We're glad you can join us in this new adventure from your workspace, your store, your van, or your couch. Like a lot of you, my new office shifts around my house depending on what's going on with my family. And no matter where I'm working, I always have company by my side. Everyone meet Tucker. He's one of the many dogs of OR, but this is his first time he gets to attend the show. We truly miss seeing you and your dogs in person this summer in Denver, and there's so much value when we all come together and have the opportunity to connect face to face. We build relationships, and it's how we help our industry grow. And that's why we built this online platform. It's important to still have the ability to meet, even virtually. So we've designed this as a place to support you wherever you are. It's also an opportunity to reach more people tuning in from around the world. This is our first foray in a digital show and a solution for the industry right now. We will learn this week and continue to enhance the technology and tweak the tools we offer based on your input. With this great opportunity to evolve, we want to design our future live events and how we integrate digital features around what is most important to you. What you'll find in Outdoor Retailer Online begins with these next 3 days of live education and events. This is the time to learn and connect with people. From there, and all through the summer, this platform becomes a tool where we can discover new brands and products and to schedule and host virtual meetings. This is more than a 3-day event. The booth will be open and the education is available throughout August 31st. So book appointments or scan the marketplace when you are ready. We've all experienced tremendous change this year. We're becoming more agile. We're reinventing what we're doing and when we're doing it. And while it's not necessarily getting any easier, the force has changed and led to an abundance of creativity. And with creativity comes hope. That's what this industry has always stood on. We're selling freedom and hope and equipping others to find both in the outdoors. It's been incredible to see so many people outside and exploring. I'm sure you're watching the data too. Sales of bikes, camping equipment, paddle and fishing gear are soaring. You'll hear in-depth data around this growth and learn about future trends in education sessions here this week. As we work to reach this growing audience, it's imperative we do so on a path defined by diversity and inclusion. We must ensure our industry not only reaches everyone, but serves everyone. We talk about this being a time of change, and we talk about this as a time to connect more people to the outdoors. These conversations only move us forward if they are grounded in equality and if we're backing them up with action. This morning and throughout this week, we hope these discussions keep you thinking and learning and reinforcing your commitment to change. We are grateful you are here to be a part of the conversation. We hope this platform and the resources within the Outdoor Retailer Online help you and your business. And we hope you leave inspired with the same optimism as if we were together. We look forward to seeing you virtually this week. And now I'd like to introduce Outdoor Industry Association Board Chair, Nora Stoll.
Welcome to this new virtual trade show format. My name is Nora Stoll, and I'm the Global Sales and Marketing Leader for W.L. Gore & Associates, and I'm also the Chairman of the Board for OIA. About this time last year, Amy Roberts announced that she'd be stepping down as Executive Director to take a new role at the North Face. So I immediately began my tenure as chair, kicking off a nationwide search for a new executive director. And while this process was intense and super competitive, we ultimately landed on a great candidate who I'm excited to introduce here in a moment, Lisa Anabrook, who was formerly the executive director at the Outdoor Foundation. But as the universe would have it, moments after she accepted this position, the global pandemic hit, which created upheaval and uncertainty in our industry, our lives, and our world. All of a sudden, it was all any of us could talk about daily during Microsoft Teams meetings and Zoom meetings, which I know all of you have been experiencing as well. And in my conversations with industry colleagues, I don't know of any brand, rep, retailer, or supplier who has not had to take a dramatic new approach to how they work, how they run their business, and how they treat their employees. And on behalf of Lisa and the entire board at OIA, I'd like to personally acknowledge the impact that this pandemic has had on our business, our families, our communities, our bank accounts, our mental health, and our favorite outdoor resources. And luckily, we have had these cherished places as a safe haven to escape to as part of our daily lives. If you've been on the receiving end or giving end of furloughs, layoffs, benefit cuts, or if you or anyone you know has gotten sick with COVID, I not only want to extend my sympathy, but also empathy as we all work through this shared experience together. But it hasn't been all doom and gloom. There have been some bright spots in our industry. We've seen record sales online and in bike sales. We've seen record participation as new consumers want to get outside, and these new consumers need gear. We've had legislation wins in Washington with the recent Great American Outdoors Act. And we've seen programs launched like the Outdoor Industry Business Certificate and the Climate Action Corps. And while the continuation of these programs that create value for our members is super exciting, the Outdoor Industry Association has also been impacted by the COVID virus in both our top and bottom lines. We've also had to lay off staff, we've had to cut salaries, we've had to reduce benefits, and we've had to revise our annual plan. And the cancellation of the recent June Outdoor Retailer Show was another tough pill to swallow, as 70% of our operating revenue comes from royalties we receive from the show. We've had several founding members step in and make donations in the form of those royalties, and I'd like to thank those companies for their leadership and contribution. And I'd also like to humbly ask other companies to consider doing the same. Meanwhile, as OIA adjusts to our new normal, our staff, management team, and board is working feverishly to re-strategize our value proposition to members and also figure out ways that we can make up that lost revenue. To speak more about this vision and strategy for the future, I'd now like to welcome our new Executive Director, Lisa Anabrook.
Thank you, Nora, and thank you to everyone who's joining us this morning. My first day was March 4th, and almost immediately we needed to shut down our office and pivot just like everyone else in this industry and in our partner organizations. This pandemic and the societal shifts of the past 4 months have changed everything, including how we convene, but it hasn't changed why we convene. It hasn't changed the value of coming together to share our inspiration and thought leadership, to amplify our collective voice on important issues, to grow our community, and even to challenge the way we see ourselves and the way we do business. You joining us here virtually in a new format, whether you're coming in your exercise clothing or your pajamas or your business wear, in a new format shows your commitment to convening and your flexibility to try new things, which is something we all need to do as we move forward in this new unmapped landscape. As the new executive director, I was thinking about how we needed to take a fresh look at OIA's value proposition and what we saw changing in our outdoor ecosystem. Our outdoor businesses, your customers, outdoor participants, and the places we go to connect with the outdoors, from neighborhood parks to national parks. And the events of the past few months have certainly accelerated a timeline for shaping or reshaping our role in that ecosystem. And I want to share with you how we're thinking about our mission as an organization and our vision. We really think about ourselves as a trade association as elevating the collective voice, influence, and power of the outdoor industry by advancing thriving businesses, thriving people, and a thriving planet, and that a strong outdoor recreation economy is one in which all people experience, benefit from, and protect the outdoors. And when we think about that statement and the objectives necessary to achieve our vision, we need to think about developing programs, products, and policies that position our industry and that larger ecosystem we operate in to thrive. And when we think about it, we know that this work is interconnected. We need all of it to work in order for any of it to work well. We know that our businesses cannot thrive without people who buy our products and use them in the great outdoors. We know more people are getting outside today as a result of the pandemic, and we need to be thinking about how can we help them continue to connect. We know that the great outdoors and our planet cannot thrive without businesses and governments that operate responsibly, or without people who deeply care about preserving and conserving our natural resources. We know that people will not care deeply about our planet and our outdoors if they don't know it and don't experience it, and they won't know it and they won't experience it unless we can make it safe, accessible, and welcoming for all. As a staff and board, we want to continue providing you with the value you expect from your trade association. So there's something you can do for us. You can help us understand what you need most, what keeps you up at night, and what opportunities you're most excited about and what you envision for our future. So we're going to be launching an industry survey soon. So be on the lookout for an email if you're in the audience today or you're in the outdoor industry. And please take the time to respond to that survey and help us understand how to best serve you. We're also really aware that we cannot realize our mission without addressing diversity, equity, and inclusion in the outdoors and the outdoor industry. And it needs to be woven into everything that we do. We recognize that this means doing things differently than we've done them in the past. So I'm happy to announce today that we have joined the In Solidarity Project and signed the Outdoor CEO Diversity Pledge, along with many of our member companies. We also know that a pledge is simply a statement, an important statement, but a statement, and that's not enough. So we're going to start by convening around marketing and representation in the outdoors, and we'll build from there. And most of today's educational offerings this week are going to be focused on this topic. Today's lunch at noon Mountain Time is about diversifying pathways into the outdoor industry and the outdoors. Our lunches tomorrow and Thursday on our climate work and the upcoming election cycle will also explore how the outdoor industry can be part of advancing environmental and social justice. We will also provide a platform for diverse voices to lead conversations about how we can create this systemic change that's needed. And that's why we've invited Angelou Ezeilo to speak today. Angelou is one of our country's most dynamic social entrepreneurs and environmental activists working to change the face of conservation in the US and help young people find meaningful careers in the outdoors. She's the author of a new book, Engage, Connect, Protect, Empowering Diverse Youth as Environmental Leaders. And she is the founder and CEO of the international nonprofit Greening Youth Foundation, which was created to engage underrepresented youth and young adults while connecting them to the outdoors and careers in the outdoors, conservation, and the environmental movement. I'm pleased to say this morning, the first people who registered for today's session are going to receive a free copy of the book, and I encourage everyone else listening today to purchase it at newsociety.com. That's newsociety.com. Greening Youth is also one of our partners in the Outdoor Foundation's Thrive Outside community networks. And this morning, Angelou is going to speak about the organization's work and will be joined later by a group of the Greening Youth Foundation's interns who will share their experiences and their visions for the future. And so it's now my pleasure to hand it over to Angelou. Thank you.
This is Jamal. Jamal is a boy who lives in a poor neighborhood. He has a friend named Kevin who lives in a wealthy neighborhood. All of Jamal's neighbors are African American, and all of Kevin's neighbors are white. Because Jamal's school district is mostly funded by property taxes, his school is not very well funded. His classrooms are overcrowded, his teachers are underpaid, and he doesn't have access to high-quality tutors or extracurricular activities. Kevin's school district is also funded by property taxes, so his school is very well funded. His classrooms are never crowded, his teachers are very well paid, and he has access to high-quality tutors and lots of extracurricular activities. Kevin and Jamal live only a few streets away from each other. So how come they're growing up in such different worlds with such different opportunities for success? The answer has to do with America's history of systemic racism. To understand it better, let's look at what life was like for Kevin and Jamal's grandparents. Decades after the Civil War, many government agencies started to draw maps dividing cities into sections that were either desirable or undesirable for investment. This practice was called redlining, and it usually blocked off entire black neighborhoods from access to private and public investment. Banks and insurance companies used these maps for decades to deny black people loans and other services based purely on race. Historically speaking, owning a home and getting a college education is the easiest way for an American family to build wealth. But when Jamal's grandparents wanted to buy a house, the banks refused because they lived in a neighborhood that was redlined. So Jamal's grandparents were not able to buy a home, and because colleges could prevent them from attending through legal segregation, their options for higher education were really scarce. Kevin's grandparents, on the other hand, got a low-interest loan to buy their first house and got accepted into a handful of top universities, which traditionally only accepted white students. This opened up a wealth of opportunities that they were able to pass on to their kids and grandkids. Even as late as the 1980s, an investigation into the Atlanta real estate market showed that banks were more willing to lend to low-income white families than to middle or upper-income African-American families. As a result, today, for every $100 of wealth held by a white family, black families have $5.04. A 2017 study confirms that redlining is still affecting home values in major cities like Chicago today. This explains how Kevin and Jamal inherited vastly different circumstances. Unfortunately, the story doesn't end there. A big part of systemic racism is implicit bias. These are prejudices in society that people are not aware that they have. Let's go back to Kevin and Jamal. Against all odds, Jamal manages to be the only student from his high school to get accepted into a great university, the same one that Kevin and his high school friends are attending. But after Kevin and Jamal both graduate, Jamal notices that his resume isn't drawing as much interest as Kevin's, even though they graduated from the same program with the exact same GPA. Unfortunately for Jamal, studies show that resumes with white-sounding names get twice as many callbacks as identical resumes with black-sounding names. Implicit bias is one of the reasons why the black unemployment rate is twice the rate of white unemployment, even among college graduates today. You can see evidence of systemic racism in every area of life. The disparities in family wealth, incarceration rates, political representation, and education are all examples of systemic racism. Unfortunately, the biggest challenge with systemic racism is that there's no single person or entity responsible for it, which makes it very hard to solve. So what can you do? The first thing you can do is work towards becoming more aware of your own implicit biases. What are some prejudices that you might hold that you're not aware of? Second, let's acknowledge that the consequences of slavery and Jim Crow laws are still affecting access to opportunity today. As a result, we should support systemic changes that create more equal opportunities for everyone. Increasing public school funding and making it independent from property taxes would be a great start, so that poor and wealthy districts can receive equal access to resources. Systemic problems require systemic solutions. Luckily, we're all part of the system, which means that we all have a role to play in making it better. Peace.
Great. I guess you're wondering why the video, but I wanted to frame the discussion that we're going to be having today with the explanation of systemic racism and how Black people have been enduring that for hundreds of years. So my hope for today is to discuss the how we got here, and perhaps that will shine light on the future and where we're wanting to go. So intersectionality is so critical. I often speak of the importance of intersectionality and how we can't talk about engaging Black and Indigenous people of color and connecting them with the environment without talking about hundreds of years of oppression and institutional racism. So therefore, I searched for a video that really demonstrates how racism permeates every single system, and that how, because of that, that's why Black and and Indigenous and people of color are where they are today. So I just want to thank ACT TV and Alex over there for giving permission for us to use that video today. And I also want to acknowledge my ancestors. They have paved the way for people like me and people that look like me and have endured through blood and sweat. Just basic, for us to have basic rights So I want to take a second to acknowledge some of the ancestors that really have left such an impression on me. So that's Dr. Wangari Maathai, Ida B. Wells, Fannie Lou Hamer, Thurgood Marshall, Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, Maggie Walker, Godwin Ezeilo, Aline Dawson. Hello, my name is Angelou Ezeilo, as Lisa said. I am the CEO and founder of Greening Youth Foundation, and I'm also an author now of the book, Engage, Connect, Protect, Empowering Diverse Young Adults as Environmental Leaders. So before COVID and all of the killings, the senseless killings, I received a call from Lisa Agenberg, and I know I'm pronouncing your name wrong, Lisa, but I remember it very vividly. I was in DC. I had just finished a book event at Busboys and Poets, and received this call, and Lisa was like, well, you know, and I think she had just become the ED of Outdoor Industry Association. So we talked about the outdoor retail show coming up in the summer and how she wanted me to be the keynote speaker and about my book and what that might look like. I was super excited. I had so much to say, so much that I wanted to share with this audience because I had been to the Outdoor Retailer show probably for about 3 years. But then COVID happened. And then George Floyd, and then those killings, and then Black Lives Matters, protests. And then everything changed. And I received a call from Lisa saying they wanted me to do this keynote virtually. But at that point, it really took a while to process. I had so many emotions and so many mixed thoughts and feelings about just, you know, what was going on in life, you know, and I knew that if I was going to be speaking to all of you all, I needed to be able to speak freely and honestly and frankly. I had to just be authentic and say what was on my mind. And it caused me to look back on my life during this period. It's been really introspective. So it caused me to look back over my life, which is almost, 50 years now. And to really watch how white America in the end only really looks out for itself and has not really carved any space for African Americans, Native Americans, Latinx, or Asian Americans. And I thought about growing up, everything was from the perspective of a white person or a white view. Everything, the adjustments were made, assimilation, everything and everybody was focused on the white perspective. So who am I? If this was a regular presentation, I'd be showing you all these slides, but I really wanted to have just this heart-to-heart conversation. So Jersey City is where I was born and raised for the most part. I am the youngest of 3. I have 2 older siblings. And, we lived in a brownstone in Jersey City, New Jersey. And my grandmother actually lived with us, Aline Dawson. And she's actually the one that really gave me my deep connection to nature and the outdoors, because she meticulously took care of this little 4x6 garden that was in front of our brownstone. And she deputized me to kind of help her with that. So, the 4 o'clock plants, and the sunflowers, all that was, because of her and because of her love for nature. And then my parents also owned 54 acres in upstate New York. So my siblings and I, every summer, will pile into our van, the 70s van, and go to upstate New York. It was called Scio, New York. So it was just this little humble house, but it was 54 acres of forested woods. And that's really where the magic began. And that's where I fell in love with the outdoors. A lot of people that are doing the work that I do, I can think of Rue Mapp and Dr. Carolyn Finney, can all go back to these childhood memories and the love for the outdoors. But I also went to a predominantly white boarding high school, Mount St. Mary's Academy. From there, I went on to an all-women's HBCU, Spelman College, and then I attended University of Florida College of Law. So as I recently reflected and preparing for this talk with you guys, I realized that a large part of my success is not because of my knowledge or because of the degrees I have or expertise or anything like that. But I think that it really has to do with my ability to make white people comfortable. And let me say that again. I believe that my success as an African-American woman in large part has to do with my ability to make white people comfortable. So as an English major at Spelman College, I thought of a poem that really can kind of best explain this feeling that, I have, and I'm sure many other people have. And it's by an African-American poet from the late 19th century, early 20th century, Paul Laurence Dunbar. It's called We Wear the Mask. I'd like to just recite an excerpt of it for you. We wear the mask that grins and lies. It hides our cheeks and shades our eyes. This debt we pay to human guile. With torn and bleeding hearts we smile. And mouth with myriad subtleties, why should the world be overwise in counting all our tears and sighs? Nay, let them only see us while we wear the mask. So in my book, Engage, Connect, Protect, I speak of the smiling Angelou for those who have read it yet, but you will be reading it because I hear you're going to be getting some copies of it. But I speak of the smiling Angelou and the angry Angelou, and how the smiling Angelou is what I know everybody wants, because that's what opens doors for the diverse young people that we serve, and it gives access and people are comfortable. But no one really wants to see the angry Angelou, or the Angelou that's in pain, or the Angelou that's so tired. But from this point on, I made a vow when I was reflecting and preparing for this, that I will no longer wear the mask. I'm always talking about the importance of white people being authentic. But now I realize that I too must be authentic in how I communicate. So over the past 15 years, I've been working with our team to show how it's beneficial to engage young adults and communities of color in this environmental sector. How by having them as part of your team removes blind spots, increases market exposure, keeps your organization relevant, and gives you access to these brilliant minds. See, Green Youth Foundation we founded it about 15 years ago, and the focus at that time was environmental education. So we brought our environmental curriculum, myself and Ruth Kitchen, to schools throughout the suburbs of Georgia. We then realized that we weren't reaching the audience that we knew we needed to reach. So we brought it to Metro Atlanta. And that's when we really started seeing how important this message was, how important it was to provide culturally relevant material, because the mission for Green Youth Foundation is engaging underrepresented youth and young adults while connecting them to the outdoors and careers in conservation. So in 2009, we were approached it was an RFP opportunity by the Department of Interior. And we were the successful applicants to provide paid internship opportunities for diverse young adults to work in that time just with the National Park Service, so in national parks across the country. That quickly spread, and then we began to be known as that organization to provide diverse young adults to work on these federal lands. So then we started working with the Department of Interior, Department of Agriculture, Federal Forest Service, Fish and Wildlife, Bureau of Land Management, NOAA, Borough Reclamation, and it goes on and on. And then we also started working with environmental nonprofits to also provide diverse young adults and provide those on-ramps to careers in conservation. And then lastly, we started working with the Outdoor Industry Association and partnered with some of the companies there to provide that access. But we knew that that wasn't just focusing on these college students, diverse college students, and providing them that access wasn't where we wanted to stop. So our Urban Youth Corps program was born in 2014. And the whole focus of that program was to provide access to young adults between the ages of 18 and 25 that weren't college bound, that were college age but not college bound, and were still wanting to pursue a career in the outdoors. So they wanted a green job, so to speak. So they wanted a trade or a skill in, and we provided just that. So we provided hard skill training in green infrastructure building, wildland firefighting, landscape management, tree care management, all of those different things, and became something that was really important for us to not just show these young adults and provide these skills and trades so that they can get these jobs, but also provide them with soft skills so that they could be trained in financial literacy and getting their GED training, or even professional development and cultural awareness. But then our international work really started to take off. So our chief strategy officer, who's also my husband, runs our GYF Africa program. So now, we have a presence in Lesotho in South Africa, in Ghana, and our offices are in Nigeria and West Africa. So you might be asking, okay, that's all federal land management agencies. What does this have to do with the outdoor retail industry? And I say the public lands are inextricably connected to the outdoor retail industry. It's literally the playground for outdoor retail. So folks that are usually engaging in activities on public lands purchase the products that a lot of you in the audience create and manufacture. But the business model is different. I get it, it's private. There's no mandates regarding like how you all need to work or what your workforce even needs to look like. However, there is a strong economic argument, obviously, because if you engage diverse people, you increase your market base and include the number one consumer. So that's an obvious one, the economic argument. But there's also a sociological argument that is just as compelling. It's important to know how to interact with Black and Indigenous people of color, how to communicate with Black and Indigenous people of color. What are the various cultures? What does that even entail? What makes them tick? What might be considered offensive? What are their values? All of those things that I just mentioned are important to attract, engage, and retain talent, because diverse talent is directly connected to your business's relevancy. So I say what is so critical and important is genuine outreach. Having people on your team that resonate with whomever you're trying to reach or whoever you're trying to sell products to. So again, if I were showing you slides today, I would probably show you a slide of the designer Gucci and how they committed a serious faux pas by designing, I think it was a sweater or something, in which when you pull it up, it looks like blackface. And they got a lot of flack for that, understandably. And I can clearly, and without even reading any of the articles, know that they had no Black people on their design team, which led them to what many call cultural appropriation. So what I wanted to do at this time is just share some practical tools for authentic diversity engagement. And I want to start with early exposure. A lot of people overlook the importance of really exposing brand awareness at a very young age. You know, I mean, you can just look at these TikTok videos that go viral and understand how critical it is to engage at that young age. They're very, young people are so impressionable, and we understand that when we're doing our environmental education programming. Invest in these programs. This is important if you want to cast a wide net to really engaging these young, diverse people, these young students. And then I would also say, look into colleges or trade schools, because there's so many diverse schools, whether it's HBCUs, like I come from and mentioned, Hispanic serving institutions, tribal colleges. At these schools, there are focuses or majors in design, product marketing. Find those schools. And then also social influencers. This is something that is so important, especially with social media age. Identify or find an influencer that shares your values and ideals. The beauty, fitness, food, and music industries have done a great job of doing this. And this doesn't necessarily undermine your authenticity or the relationship. It's now about being intentional. So social media is extremely powerful, and I'm sure you all are very much aware of that. And then the other tool that I will say that is so important that I have to underscore several times is partnerships. Connect with an organization that is already engaging the young people or the audience that you're trying to reach. Invest in their programs, provide them with resources, collaborate on projects, collaborate on merchandise. Cast a wide net, but the thing that I would say is first listen. You know, this is an area that you do not know a lot about. So if you partner with an organization that does work with that audience, first listen, understand the pain points of these communities that you're wanting to reach. What are their priorities? So I guess what I'm saying is trust their expertise. So arguably, we're on the precipice of change. You know, we're seeing all this different stuff, but how do I feel? Tired as hell. It's like, you know, the global reckoning, COVID, which is disproportionately impacting communities of color, you know, all of the BLM protests for George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Rashard Brooks, Tamir Rice. I literally can go on and on. So there's marches, there's statements, there's online signs of solidarity, but is all of this just performative? I'm so thankful for the leadership of Teresa Baker and Chris Perkins with their CEO Diversity Pledge. But I would say, don't just sign that petition and that statement, but what is the action behind that statement? What are you doing? What is your action plan? So in the fall or even the winter, will all this just blow over? Will you go back to your white reality where privilege, access, and opportunity is abundant? I think what we need right now is substantive change, not equality in the abstract. So I'm always quoting Mickey Fern. He's my mentor, and he was a deputy under John Jarvis. I was just on a show with him. And his quote, he's always leaving these gems. His quote was, you can't solve systemic problems with ad hoc solutions. So profound. Because every white person is benefiting from a racist system without doing one act. So doing nothing makes you complicit. So my call to action, sacrifice white privilege for justice. Keep fighting until you are uncomfortable with the solution. So I'm asking white people, to give up something to benefit somebody else that does not look like you. We're looking for true allyship. Why did I write my book, Engage, Connect, Protect, with my brother, Nick Childs? I think I wrote it because I really wanted to call out bullshit. I wanted to debunk these stereotypes that people of color are not interested in the environment. I wanted to share my journey as an African-American leader, a woman in this profession that is predominantly white and male. I wanted to provide resources for mainstream environmental organizations so that partnering will be easier. I wanted to provide a database of organizations led by people of color. And I apologize if you're not included in there, but we will be updating that on our website. I wanted to provide, as I said earlier, the schools, a list of the schools that HBCUs, Hispanic serving institutions, and tribal colleges. And I wanted to provide all of those with the disciplines that they have at those schools, so that when you're looking for these young people for internship opportunities or what have you, you have it all right there in a book compiled for you. It's basically a resource for building partnerships, and it provides insight into the minds of diverse folks. So my thoughts on what systemic change might look like in this field is to remove the HR rituals and policies and barriers that block access to opportunities, and the creation of new systems led by people of color. All right, so I want to stop here to introduce my GYF rock stars. And I'd like to start with Jeremiah Edwards. Jeremiah, you want to join us?
Hey,
how you
there.
doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm great. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what you're working on right now.
Yep. So my name is Jeremiah Edwards. Hello, everyone. And I currently work with the National Park Service for the Green and Youth Foundation at Everglades National Park in Everglades City, Florida. And so I'm a ranger intern here. I'm in the Everglades. And so I'm engaging in things of giving ranger talks, kayak trips, boat tours, and various other things to do as a ranger. And really, this is one of my first things of being overly involved in the outdoor industry, while like working outside and giving kayak trips and stuff like that. I never did that as a kid. So being able to do that now is pretty cool. And something I would have never imagined or dreamed of doing. So it's fun.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you so much, Jeremiah. Let's bring on our other panelists, your co-panelists, so that we can have this discussion. I think I want to introduce Lauren Kim next. Lauren, are you out there?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes. How are you, Lauren?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Awesome. So if you can just share a little bit about maybe how you got connected to the outdoors and what you're doing now. Uh-oh.
Definitely. So,
Okay, good.
oh, did I break up?
No, you're okay.
Okay. Awesome. So hi, everyone. My name is Lauren. I'm currently a senior at Yale University studying environmental studies and urban studies. I grew up in the suburbs of California and really found my connection to nature through my mom, who worked in the agricultural industry, and my dad, who's a traditional healer. And I've really found the environment as like an extension of myself and relationship with my family. And so when I went to college in the city of New Haven, I really wanted to find ways to get involved in urban agriculture, in different environmental justice movements that were happening in the city. And through the help of a grant through the Green and Youth Foundation and the North Face, I was able to start some of those projects and get connected with this community. So
awesome, awesome. Welcome, Lauren. Okay, next up is Kiana Leverett. Kiana, where are you?
Hi, can you hear me?
There you are. How are
Hello.
you? Would you like to just share maybe early connection to the environment and what you're working on now, what you're doing now?
Sure. So, hi everyone. My name is Kiana Leverett. I am the current environmental education coordinator for the Georgia Audubon Society. And my early connection to nature was really just going on walks with my father. We grew up outside of Chicago, so it was very, very concrete, not a lot of green spaces around us. And it was just nice to be able to have a space to go to unwind, to have conversations, to get away from all the noise around you and just center yourself. And before this, I was a Green and Youth intern, both in the private sector, working with the U.S. Forest Service and the Chattahoochee-Oconee National Forest, and also working for a nonprofit as a conservation program intern for the Atlanta Audubon Society.
And now you're hired with the Georgia Audubon Society. Is that correct? Congratulations. I know you just got that job. Awesome, awesome. So as I look around, and if you guys were, and I was so hoping that you all would be able to go to Denver so that you can experience the Outdoor Retailer show, which is incredible. It's very overwhelming. But what you would see is that, you all as an African-American male, as a Korean woman, as an African-American woman, you all are anomalies. So can you each kind of just give a little insight as to why you think the numbers are so low for people of color in this area, in this field? I'll start with you, Kiana.
Okay, I think that the numbers are so low. One reason is because of visibility. I think that when we're younger, depending on where you come from, what sort of background you have, topics like these aren't really discussed as far as like going outside or getting involved in the outdoors or picking up outdoor hobbies even. It's all a matter of what you see in front of you. And then also when you turn on the television or you look through a magazine and you see these ads and you see these videos or the commercials for these products and you don't see yourself in it, or you watch a television show about the outdoors and you don't see anyone that looks like you, I think that's a major drawback, or that will really keep you from wanting to even pursue that sort of activity or hobby or even career.
I see. That reminds me of a saying that I always quote by Sally Ride, that you have to see it to be it. So would you agree that growing up, you didn't necessarily see images of yourself, so therefore that kind of impacted how you saw the access to have a career in that field? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, it took me a really long time to get to the idea of even having a career like this, just because of the lack of seeing people in positions like this. So I definitely think being able to see it is really important.
Thank you, Kiana. Lauren, you want to jump in there?
I definitely agree with what Kiana said, and something that Angelou, you said earlier about what it means to attract people of color, but also retain people of color is really important. So thinking about mentorship opportunities and the lack of mentorship by people of color, for people of color, and what that means for young people who want to be in this industry, but don't necessarily have the resources or the similar background stories that allow them to, I hope I'm not breaking up, that allow them to really do a full path in this environment. And so thinking about the culture around the outdoors, the kind of exclusivity of the type of gear you have, the type of experiences you've had, and how that...
Lauren, I need you to kind of elaborate on that a little bit. So you've even, prior to getting to Yale, so you're saying that you felt that there was this exclusivity based on the gear. So obviously for this crowd, that's something that I would like you to just kind of elaborate on a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. So my first year before I went to college, we had these like summer pre-orientation trips, and it was my first time going backpacking. I was so excited. I've never been camping before. And so I was so ready. And then I remember they sent out this huge list of all the stuff that you needed to buy in order to go on this trip.
Mm-hmm.
I remember even the most simplest ask, like, oh, you need 4 Nalgene water bottles. I was like, I cannot buy 4.
Did they specifically say Nalgene?
Yes, they did. And so I had to
Weird.
look online, and I found out that Gatorade bottles do the same thing. So I remember going on this trip and feeling so out of place based on the fact that I didn't have any previous experiences. I didn't look like my peers. I couldn't have conversations with my peers about previous experiences that I've had. And just thinking about why they asked us to bring this gear, it's all about safety, right? I wanted to feel safe. And
Right.
because I couldn't bring what I needed, I didn't feel safe in several ways. And so that was a big obstacle.
Wow. Thank you for that, Lauren. And I just want to interject there and thank our partners out there in the audience, because we have something called a gear drive. And so many of these outdoor retailers have donated to that, so that Green Youth Foundation is able to provide our interns, our Youth Corps members with gear so that they could have this first time experience and have it be positive. So, you know, I'm with you on that, Lauren. You know, like, I always wondered, why do you have to spend this much money for this particular pair of hiking boots? But I have to, you know, the stuff is it's incredible, and it's engineered so that your experience is going to be enhanced by using these different products. So we really do appreciate those that have donated to our gear drive so that you all could have your first time experience be positive. But thank you for sharing that. Jeremiah, was there anything you wanted to add?
Yeah, so, you know, why are the numbers so low? And I was listening to both Kiana and Lauren's experiences, and I could identify with both of those. You know, growing up, when we went on family trips, it was really with my grandparents. Because my mother, before she became an educator, and while she was an educator, she had to have some time working there in the summer. So my grandparents would take my sister and I on these events or on these trips to like NAACP conventions. So that's how we got exposure to different cities and states and what have you, you know. But I remember when we were at home in Mississippi at my grandparents' home, you know, they have this pond that's 2 acres of land, of 32 acres, you know, so they have 2 acres of land, strictly pond. And we would ask Grandma and Grandpa, can we go swimming? And they would say, you can go swimming, but if something happens to you, we can't get you, you know?
Wow.
And my sister and I would think that was a joke. But as I got older, and I was a history major at Hampton, so and as I learned history, well, people at my grandparents' age, Black people during that time, were not afforded the opportunity to learn how to swim. So, you know, and as I realized that, and I thought about all of my trips that we went on with my grandparents, yeah, we had exposure to like the Washington Monument or San Antonio, Texas, or what have you. We didn't have those camping experiences or those kayaking experiences, which I'm having now. And I didn't realize how much of an effect it had on me until I was training for here in the Everglades. And we had to do a self-rescue program where they dumped us in an 8-foot water pool, 8-foot pool, excuse me, and said, you need to figure out how you're going to rescue yourself. And all of my coworkers who were white, you know, they knew how to tread water. Well, I knew how to swim, but I didn't know how to tread water. And just seeing that difference in how to be able to engage and how to be able to adjust, I see why, you know, the numbers are so low, because we don't feel safe, as Lauren was saying. We don't feel safe because we don't have the access to the gears or to the knowledge or the training as other people have.
Jeremiah, that is so profound. And that makes me think of when I said earlier, intersectionality, and how that's so critical, because you can't just look at where we are now and say, well, why is it that Black people or people of color don't do these different things? You can't look at it in a vacuum. You have to understand that there are hundreds of years of legal discrimination, you know, in all these different systems that have caused us to be where we are today and literally trying to catch up. And that's why there's such a large racial wealth gap. You know, I can go on and on and on, but it's impossible to really focus on anything in the environment. My favorite saying was, President Obama actually came to Atlanta for, I think it was a Green Build Expo. It was amazing. And he said, you can't talk about sustainability with Black people or people of color and not talk about economics. You know, so we often want to say, you know, people of color should just be volunteering and doing all this stuff, which is great. I hope to get to a point where fundamental needs are not they're not necessarily something that's on the forefront of our minds, you know, and of the people that we engage, so that we can just think about volunteering and giving of our time. But unfortunately, because of all of these hundreds of years, that's not where we are. So if we want to engage people of color, we have to take all of that into consideration. So thank you for that comment, Jeremiah. So the next thing I want to talk about is perception. And you touched on it a little bit, Lauren, so I'm going to start with you. Describing an experience where you felt unwelcomed and what prompted you to continue.
I remember taking an environmental history class. So thinking about not only imaging in the outdoor industry, but the kind of stories that we tell and whose histories are told. And my professor, who was white, ended the class by sharing a quote by an environmentalist, but also someone who perpetuated racist stereotypes about Indigenous people, Black people, people of color, and thinking about how stories of Black and Indigenous people of color were not told in environmental history. And that was the education that I was supposed to be receiving. Made me really question why I was interested in this field, why I even studied. And it's only through programs like the Greening Youth and North-Based Women of Color Environmentalist Grant that I got, and other cohort-based programs, that I was able to not only connect with peers that looked like me, that came from similar backgrounds, but that's where I found that mentorship. It was an explicit program that was meant for people like us. And without that, I don't think I would be interested in continuing and staying in this field.
Wow. Thank you, Lauren. And thank you to the North Face out there for such an awesome program. It really has meant a lot, and we will be doing it for additional years. So we're really excited about that. How about you, Kiana?
Okay. A time that I can say that I felt unwelcome, it's not really a specific event, it's more of something that happens often. And it comes in the form of a microaggression. So a lot of the times in my line of work, I'll go out and I'll speak to different groups of people about different environmental topics, whether they be children that are in kindergarten to high schoolers to elderly people.
You're an environmental educator, right?
Yeah, environmental education. And more oftentimes than not, whenever I go out and do a program, everyone is always surprised to see me show up like as the person that's supposed to be teaching or facilitating. And oftentimes I'm always getting questions about, well, how did you get this position? Or how did you wind up right here? Or like wanting to know about my qualifications or being super interested in my background. And then when things do turn out for the better, comments about how surprised they are about how well-spoken I am, or about how I talk, or how I'm eloquent. It's almost like all of that comes afterwards, as if it was so surprising for you to hear in the first place. And coming from an HBCU, I was always taught that you're going to have to work 10 times harder to prove yourself, but to hear it on a regular basis, almost to the point where it's a normal thing, is sort of what made me feel unwelcome. But it also keeps pushing me to keep going as well.
Thank you, Kiana. And I can relate to that so much. Believe it or not, I am the CEO of an organization, wrote a book, trained attorney, all this type of stuff. I still get in 2020, you speak really well. And I'm like, shouldn't I though? Like, I'm quite educated. Why am I being, commended for speaking well? So that kind of goes along with what you're saying, Kiana. I could so relate to that. So it sometimes is a moment where you grind your teeth, because I think it really is meant as a compliment. But that's where that implicit bias is, because it's like I think when people say something like that, they're not aware of what they are assuming or what they're putting out there, because the backstory is, my assumption was that you were not going to be able to speak well. So you just surprised me by being able to put together sentences and do subject verb agreement and all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, I learned that a really long time ago. I'd be demanding money back from Spelman College if I couldn't speak well.
It makes you feel like an imposter sometimes, like imposter syndrome. Like
I want
people are
hold
like,
on to
oh,
that thought, Kiana, because I want to get back to imposter syndrome. That's really, and I know Lauren, you want to add to that as well. Jeremiah, though, share with us an experience in which you felt uncomfortable, but then you kept pushing forward.
Yeah, so for me, the most recent experience was when I was actually trying to prepare for a kayak trip here in the national park, where I was trying to ask for some guidance. You know, hey, you guys, can you help me out a little bit? And like I said, I'm the only Black man there. And so I'm trying to ask for guidance from one of the rangers who's like the head ranger. And I don't know what the exact issue was, but while I was trying to ask him for guidance, he was being very difficult with me. And he finally got to the point where he was like, well, if you don't understand it, I'm just not gonna answer the question, or I'm just gonna let you figure it out. And, for me, I kind of felt as if I was kind of being written off,
Right.
if you don't get it now, I'm not going to try to explain it. And thankfully, like my other coworkers, they're able to sit down with me and help me map out this area or map out this route. But I think I credit that too. I think I also credit that to like my lack of experience or lack of knowledge about the outdoors. That safety factor, not feeling safe, is very big. It's very big on your mental health. If you don't feel safe, you're not going to feel eager to go out and do something, right?
Right.
So that I think that's also something about that experience, my lack of experience with the outdoor industry, because I always heard, well, Black people don't go camping, or Black people don't do this, and Black people don't do that, so I have that lack of knowledge, and the only knowledge I have is, well, Black people don't. So because Black people don't, I'm going to continue to believe Black people don't, and I'm not going to go out and do what Black people don't do, so it's a mixture of those things that are experienced.
Jeremiah, and that's why it's so important for us at GYF, at Green Youth Foundation, to shift that narrative, because it really is a self-perpetuating like stereotype, so if you believe that if you're seeing images and it lacks people of color doing things in the outdoors, having careers in the outdoors, recreating in the outdoors, then you're going to think that maybe I shouldn't be out here. So that's why it's so important for me in working with our partners out there to change that prototype, because it's almost like a prototype of who should be out there recreating and working in the outdoors. That's why I'm so thankful for the Outdoor Afros and Latino Outdoors, Hispanic Access Foundation, Brown Girls Who Can, all these different organizations who are kicking that stereotype in the butt, basically, and saying, we're doing it and we're doing it well and we're loving it and we're not asking for permission.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. I was going to say, because you were mentioning like the advertising stuff. When we're watching TV, we don't see advertisements on our channels. Like for example,
BET. What do you mean by that, Jeremiah?
Like you don't see the advertisements of outdoor industries. I don't ever remember seeing
when you say our channels, do you mean like BET and things like that?
Yeah, BET, TV1, Centric. Even like the children channels, Nickelodeon, Disney Channel, whatever. We don't see those commercials. What do we see? We usually see Nike commercials. We see food commercials for sure. The new gadgets that you can buy, what have you. You don't see any commercials with us in it. And then when you do see those commercials, you don't hear our music. You don't see our representation. You don't see anyone who has hair that looks like us. If you do see someone who has our hair or who has, our actual whatever, they're very refined. They're very, they have on that mask, as Paul Laurence Dunbar talked about, or as W.E.B. Du Bois, that veil, in order to present themselves as such, which is something that is very important, but is another microaggression that we don't pay attention to.
Such a good point. And that takes me to your point, Kiana, about the imposter syndrome. Talk about that a little bit.
So, imposter syndrome is the idea that you are not who you say you are. You may have all the credentials, all of the experience needed for a job, but you still don't feel qualified for that job because of implicit biases and other pressures that you put on yourself to be in that space. And I feel like as a person of color, I feel that all too often because I feel like I'm walking into situations and people are automatically questioning my belief of even being in that space.
Absolutely, absolutely. Lauren, did you want to add to that? I know you shared a story with me about that as well.
Yeah, I think about imposter syndrome as people of color, especially women of color, holding this burden to educate others and to represent an entire population. So
Wow.
I feel the extra burden when I speak, when I have to, I always think about, oh, if I do something wrong, if I don't know something, does that represent my entire community? Does that close doors for other people that look like me? And thinking about the importance of not just, you can't just hire one person of color, or you can't just temporarily give a grant to someone, because that puts a lot of burden on an individual.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
The entire community.
Yes. So you feel often that you're representing all Korean, Black, everybody, you know, so what you say, everyone's holding on your statement because it better be good. You're representing everyone.
Yes, and that's stressful as it is. I said that's already stressful. You know, you're new and then you realize, oh, I'm carrying the weight of all Black folks. Oh man, well let me make sure I get it together. You know.
Right. It's like if you feel as if you mess.
Go ahead, Kiana.
I was just gonna say it's like as if you mess up, like if Angelou makes a mistake, they're not gonna say Angelou made that mistake. They're gonna say Black women make mistakes like that.
Mm-hmm.
That's sort of how you address it when you're walking into a situation of carrying a burden. So I completely understand what you're talking about.
And that's that tired feeling, you know, because that weight you are, you know, imagine I've been doing this for a long time and you just are constantly, you know, people, you have to show that face. And I think I'm at this point where I'm like, we need to start really having authentic exchanges. You need to know, you know, and I'm not saying perhaps I'm just as guilty in that, you know, because I feel like I needed to put this protective, you know, that mask on so that I can even function. But I think it, you know, after this whole Black Lives Matters protests and the movement, I'm ripping off that Band-Aid, you know, because we need to move this conversation forward. And admittedly, I'm not helping either, you know, by making people not showing my real and true emotions about things that come up.
Well, and then here's the pretty thing. Here's the beautiful thing about that, right? When we see that lifting of the veil and the removing of the mask, you start to realize there's not this one size fit all strategy, right? You know, you realize that not all Black people are the same, or not all Asian Americans are the same. You know, we are very diverse. We all have like a wide range of thoughts and feelings and emotions that is just not fits into that cookie cutter style that has been used for decades, right? So that's the other cool thing about it, is that you're starting to see the diversity in people of color, right? Diversity in the Black community. That is just amazing. You know, that I think that just feeds into it too. So
that's such a beautiful statement, because we're not a monolith. Like we come in all different. We have, you know, I'm vegan and I like hiking, but does that mean that the sister next to me is the same way? No. You know, so getting to know those differences is a beautiful thing. So just a question about your peers. What do your peers think about you pursuing careers in this environmental, outdoor industry, whatever? Share what you're pursuing, and how do your peers take what you're doing right now? Lauren, you start us off.
I think what's hard about being interested in this environment, the environmental field, is that people put you in this cookie cutter, exactly what Jeremiah said, this cookie cutter box. And so I think that idea of like, oh, Lauren, you just want to do work related to the environment, that ignores the fact that doing environmental work is racial justice work. For me, it's urban studies. I want to work in disasters, climate disasters, and helping our most impacted communities deal with those everyday events that are going to be happening. And so thinking about how just because we need to stop thinking about the environment also as this single issue. Environmental issues are so linked with class, with race, with our everyday actions and how we interact with people. And so I think also by having conversations like this too, people in our generation, our peers are starting to realize that when we talk about race, we talk about the environment. And when we see those intersections, we also create communities around us that help us, get through.
Right. So Lauren, did you, before the North Face, were you aware of the outdoor industry, the outdoor retail industry, and how large it is?
I had no idea. I would go to the stores inside and look at the tents just for fun, just because I thought they were really pretty, but I didn't realize how large of a community it is. I went skiing for the first time maybe like a year ago, and I was terrible at it. I had no I wore exercise pants. I wore like running.
And that gets back to the point that we made and why we're so thankful for the gear drive, because when you show up, I remember my husband and my brother went golfing for the first time when they were much younger, and they had on like cargo shorts and sneakers, I think maybe even basketball sneakers or something. And they were pretty much laughed off the course, because they didn't have the right gear. So having the right gear is a thing, and you can best believe they went and got appropriate golf shirts and all this kind of stuff. So Jeremiah, how about you? What do your peers think about what you're doing, or even your family?
Yeah. So, my peers, my coworkers here, it's real cool for them to have someone that's open to have these conversations with them about me growing up. And so I'm always sharing with them stories that from what I'm hearing from my family, where I'm telling them that, when I'm telling my family or my friends, I saw a python today. What? You saw a python, or I'm telling them I went kayaking, and under my kayak, a bull shark came under my kayak. A bull shark? What? So and watching my family's listening to my family and friends' reaction, saying, I don't know how you do it, or showing them videos of dolphins. It's amazing watching their reactions, because it's something that they weren't able to experience, but it encourages them to want to go out and experience it.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Before, it's so small, it's such a small thing, but it has the greatest impact. Before I was here at Everglades, I was at Minuteman National Historical Park in Concord, Massachusetts. And so I was able to do interpretation as a black fighter in the Revolutionary War, at the beginnings of the Revolutionary War, and even Black families there. Wow, I've never seen, our representation. So, you see that even in this outdoor industry, it's something small, but it goes, it touches so many different people, and it amazes so many different people. And watching hearing my coworkers tell this story, you see something click with it, like, I never had that experience. Why? Because I always saw people like me doing it. My family always did stuff like this. So I never am able to experience what you're experiencing, but I'm glad that I'm able to hear these stories, because now my intent and my purpose and my goals have changed. So what
are you pursuing? What is your
my career choice right now is I'm studying for law school, but specifically,
I'm kidding.
I was waiting for you, but specifically in the healthcare industry. That's what I want to do. But the reason why I chose healthcare is because I'm seeing the effect of the environment, or different environments, having on the health of people of color.
Absolutely.
Flint, Michigan is not the only place where people of color or poor people are being affected by poor water quality. It's also happening in South Carolina. It's also happening in Richmond, Virginia. We just aren't talking about it, and we just don't have the knowledge about it. And if our environment isn't good, our health isn't good. And if our health isn't good, we can't go out and fight for the environment. It's all, systematic. It's all cyclical.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Oh, and I have a question here. So yeah, so they're wanting me to remind them, the book is Engage, Connect, Protect, Empowering Diverse Youth as Environmental Leaders. You could find it at newsociety.com or also at Amazon. So Kiana, because you're with the Georgia Audubon Society, and I must say I'm also a board member for the Georgia Audubon Society, what are your thoughts on the whole Amanda and Christian Cooper Black birder incident in New York City?
When that incident happened, I immediately related, and almost every other Black birder that I know related to his experience of just walking into a place, sometimes even by yourself, and feeling like you don't belong there, or feeling like everyone else is wondering why you're there, or that you're up to no good simply because you're there. And I just felt so much for him in that moment when I saw the video, and how he was immediately taken to be something that he was not. And she also did not know who he was, what his intentions were, because as a birder, when you see a dog that isn't on a leash, or even an animal, like whether it be a cat or a dog, not on a leash in a park, it's a danger to ground nesting birds, birds that are feeding on the ground, and other insects. It scares birds away. So I completely understand why he mentioned to her. I feel like any birder would.
Thank you for that insight. Exactly.
I feel like any birder would have said something about that, but it's the fact that it was him that said it, I think, what really set her off.
Well, quick question, Kiana. So is it, because a lot of people ask that, like, why did this man have like treats for the dog and all this kind of stuff? So you just kind of explained that as a birder, you're trying to figure out, if you see a loose dog, you're figuring out how to engage this dog because you're focused on your birding. Yeah.
It's like you want to keep the you want to keep the pet calm, because if the dog is barking and freaking out and running all over the place and going into the bushes, then he's interfering with all the birds, and also interfering with the birds that you're trying to see with your experience. And so if you are giving treats to another person's dog, oftentimes it'll sort of cajole them into saying like, okay, maybe I should put my dog or put my cat on a leash.
Got it. And Lauren, your thoughts on how Amanda weaponized his blackness, basically, and basically, use that as a weapon, that to me, well, you just share your thoughts on that.
I think the focus of that story quickly pivoted to Amanda portraying herself as a victim. And so when thinking about why these incidents occur, if focusing the event on the victim and making it look like, oh, I'm a victim, not necessarily a perpetrator.
Right.
I think that shifts the entire focus away from the racial injustice that occurred. And so I think when having conversations about race, it's not necessarily like we are attacking someone. We are calling you in to recognize that directly or indirectly, you are perpetuating a system. And the focus of this should not be like, oh, my feelings are hurt. Oh, right. Why is this about me? It should be focused on Black, Indigenous people of color who have felt those pains every single day, not this one instance where someone is called out.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And Jeremiah, thank you, Lauren. Jeremiah, as a Black male, I'm sure in the environmental space, my husband talks about this all the time, there's this feeling of kind of almost making yourself smaller because, of what your fear of how you may be received.
Yeah.
Talk about that a little bit at Everglades.
Yeah, I mean, just thinking about that story, that you guys were just talking about, and my own experiences. I remember even here just a few weeks ago, actually. We're on the COVID shutdown, so we're not allowing visitors to the visitor center. But I was out at the on the grounds, just picking up trash and just being a presence for the visitors. And I remember I remember feeling like certain visitors were hesitant to approach me or even making eye contact with me because I didn't fit in that cookie cutter style as a ranger, And then it wasn't until I said to them, "Hi, I'm a ranger. How can I help you?" They felt, "Oh, thank God." You know what I'm saying? Like that you could feel that relief on them when they were like, "Oh, goodness, thank you. Yes, I have this question and that question," which I noticed that difference when they talked to my coworker Jacob. Jacob walks in, "Hi guys, how can I help you?" And they have no questions whatsoever.
Wow.
They feel relaxed. Even when I have to go and do the boat tours, I have to start off with a certain energy just so they can know that they can trust the information that I give them.
Wow.
Or I have to bounce off of the captains or the mates and say, "Hey, isn't this true?" Or the captains didn't believe me, but they researched this themselves and found it to be true. You can tell there's a shift in the information that's given.
Yeah. And that kind of goes back to what I was saying about making them feel comfortable, and that's how oftentimes I'm wondering, like, why is that like the first step that has to be done before I can just launch into whatever it is I'm there to do? So I got a couple more questions. I think we're going to be opening it up to questions from the audience. But the name of this is systemic change. What might that look like in the outdoor industry? So I want each of you, I know you've been thinking about what recommendations would you give the outdoor industry companies as it relates to DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, or JEDI, whichever you want to say. Kiana, you want to start us off?
Sure. I want to go back to something that you said earlier in the conversation about visibility and being very mindful about who you are reaching out to who you are engaging with. So if I could say anything, I would just encourage everyone to just be very mindful about who your audience is or who you're reaching out to, and then how far does that reach go? And then ask yourself, is it all encompassing of everyone? And if it's not, then maybe something needs to be changed. Maybe you need to reach out to somebody else or get another, as a suggestion, another influencer or another avenue to reach out to. So maybe if you're not on Twitter, if you want to reach more people, try getting more involved on social media and touching more fans and touching more people in that way.
Nice.
Visibility is really important, I think, right now.
Got it. Thank you. How about you, Jeremiah?
Well, one way that these companies could reach out and look at to have a systemic change, is going to these HBCUs or minority service institutions. That's the term that I was looking for. But these minority serving institutions, and actually doing somewhat like a pop-up there. Whether it's having your table and you have your different gear, or talk about different internships or opportunities that you have in the student center. Very little things or very little actions that can make a huge difference. Colleges do it all the time in high schools, so if the colleges could do it to bring students to their school, why can't you do that as your company? Or even creating partnerships with different schools in that area, with different HBCUs or MSIs in that area. How can you have your products and stuff going within there, going into that area? Or how can you partner with their, let's say, radio stations or their TV education programs or whatever? How can you partner with them and having more students of color producing advertisements and things like that are geared towards people of color? Like I said, there's so much diversity in our communities. Why not actually go to the community and ask them to see how can you do it? Because we're looking for jobs, right? We're looking for ways to make money. So, why not just go straight to it?
Yes, absolutely. How about you, Lauren?
Yeah, I think one thing that has been with me during this entire conversation is how thinking about the outdoors shouldn't be this one-off vacation. It shouldn't be this special event that only certain people of a certain class can experience. Because even in the outdoors, people of color don't get a vacation, right? We're still dealing with, you can't separate yourself from the color of your skin, from your background.
Right.
And so I think it's going to take a shift in how we think about the outdoors. How can you think about everyday experiences in communities of color, right? So investing in urban green spaces, thinking about climate impacts that are already affecting communities of color, and how outdoor retailers can invest, donate, can help those everyday experiences. Because again, like a systemic change is something that happens every day. It's not going to happen overnight. It needs sustained action. And I think just thinking about it from a different perspective can be a good starting point.
Awesome. So do you all see why I call them my GYF superstars? They are incredible. Thank you all so much. My ending thought is to read, listen, donate, plan, march, vote. Can I say that one again? Vote, speak out, step in, and step up. I'd like to thank Lisa Agenberg and OIA for just allowing us to have this discussion today. It was very refreshing. I hope you guys enjoyed it as well. To my co-panelists, partners in the outdoor industry, my GYF awesome team. And lastly, I'd like to bid farewell to two civil rights giants that we lost a couple of days ago, C.T. Vivian and John Lewis. We will continue the fight for equality. As John Lewis said, if not now, then when? Thank you. So I think now we are going to be opening it up for some questions. Is that correct? Okay. Not sure whether I should still be talking, so this is a little awkward. Can y'all hear me?
I can hear you.
Oh, okay. The questions are in the Q&A. Okay. What would I do without April? But I don't see the questions. They're not popping up.
Well, yeah, it's the Q&A area. We have been answering them. We're trying to answer them in our answers. But like one question that you have is, what does it mean for white people to give up privilege for justice? That was one question. That was
right,
asked.
and that's a great question because it's one of those intangibles. But I think that there are things that occur, you know, in the access, or if there's scholarship opportunity, there's different things that you encounter as a white person in your life where you could either receive that benefit, or you could say, you know, I need to open this up to others so that people who haven't been able to benefit from these type of resources or whatever it is are able to first partake. And I know that that's very, you know, more esoteric, but I think if we dig deep, we can understand that there are privileges that you're aware of. And I'm kind of reminded of, and this is just kind of tongue in cheek, it was an Eddie Murphy skit on Saturday Night Live. I don't know if you guys saw that one where, you guys are probably too young, but you know, he was let on, it was a bus, and he had dressed up as a white guy, and he went onto this bus, and it was like, once he got in, it was like a party and free stuff being given out and all sorts of things. It was actually funny, but I'm making a joke, but I'm really serious that, you know, we have to start figuring out how to, you know, allow others to be at the front and to partake in these benefits that we know that people of color need due to hundreds of years of oppression and discrimination. Maybe that'll be my next book. Are there any other questions? I wish I could, can you guys see the questions?
Yes,
Lauren
I do.
or Kiana?
There's another question that says, when I bring up diversifying the membership of orgs/endeavors I'm involved with that are predominantly white, people often go immediately to the issues that impact low-income people. Can you please comment on that? Is it completely based on stereotypes?
Is it completely what?
Based on stereotypes.
Well, yeah, I would say that, that's a two-part answer because of this whole intersectionality piece. Typically, and a lot of times, when you say low-income communities, we are talking about Black and Latino communities because of this history. But as we have said on this call this morning, we're not monolithic. So, there are Black people that have resources, that are educated, that would buy that REI bike, that would go to the Grand Canyon because they have resources, and that's the same for Hispanic, Latinx, or Asian American. So, but the thing that I would emphasize here is the importance of being intentional. I think that we have gotten beyond a point where we're like, oh, I don't want to pursue people of color because that might seem like tokenism or, a stereotype based on a stereotype that we need this particular person. Because of the way this industry looks in 2020, by all means be intentional. We need people of color to represent within the outdoor retail industry, within the federal land management agencies, within environmental NGOs, because we need those diverse voices. And just having one Black person doesn't mean that that Black person is representing all, so we need LGBTQ voices, we need to stop with this othering, we need to really make sure we are inclusive of others, and the things that make this country beautiful is the diversity. So we need to celebrate that. And we're not really seeing that in this industry. So we have to get on that. Any other questions, guys? I see that there's a lot and I hate that I can't get to them.
There are. I feel like we can do one last one, where one is beyond putting gear in front of BIPOC, are there ways the gear itself can be more inclusive?
Well, the gear can be inclusive if you having designers and creators on your team that, that are of color. So, when I was talking about the Gucci faux pas, the fact that they didn't have anybody on their team to help guide them with that design, because you have blind, you have blind spots for sure. So if you have people of color on your design teams, then you're going to make sure your hiking pants are not designed so that there's no room for a booty. You know what I mean? Like, how many times, Kiana, have you tried on some of these pants and you're like, I can't get it past my thigh? You know what I mean? So you need to make
so many
sure
times.
all the time, right? So, that's a thing, like making sure there are diverse people on your design teams so that you are incorporating. You guys have to check out Blackish. I talk about it in my book, and it's really relevant because he's a part of, Anthony Anderson is a part of a marketing firm that's all white except for him and one other. And it's just the stories that come up there are so relevant, funny, but relevant. So do we have time for one more question, or was that it? And you guys must have access to something I don't, because I'm not getting any updates or questions. So you guys got it. Anyone more
it.
that seems, Jeremiah, anything else?
Yeah, they're telling us that we have to end, so that's all the questions. But they'll answer they'll send us all the questions afterwards.
Okay. Well, once again, I just want to say thank you to our panelists for, sharing your time with us and helping to prepare for this very frank and honest conversation. So like this slide says, if you're interested in GYF programming, partnerships or interns, or even like with the North Face, helping us to develop a program with you, please reach out. Our email address, website is there. Or if you want to engage me for speaking engagements or workshops or something regarding the book, here's my information there. And April, my assistant, her information is there as well. So thank you all very much and enjoy the rest of the show.
Thank you so much, Angelou, Jeremiah, Lauren, and Kiana. And thank you to the audience for attending today's powerful session on systematic racism and what systematic change could look like in the outdoor industry. There were many, many more great questions that came through, and we will answer all the questions and send them out to registrants. If you would like to revisit the session or get someone else that wasn't signed up to watch this powerful session, it will be available throughout Outdoor Retailer Online, as well as Outdoor Industry Association's website. You can find it under the Events and Education link. If you have any questions about the session or want to get any questions to, you can go to events@outdoorindustry.org. Have a wonderful show, and thank you so much for being here today.